say the fucking word. I narrowed my eyes at her, considering if I should stop. But she relaxed herself. All on her own. Breathing deeply in and out again, and once again limp on top of me. I was still cautious as my thumbs were wedged between her bra and her warm breasts. So I moved them a little. Just to see if it made her say the word Hortense. But it didn't. I still gazed in her eyes as I slowly moved them up, wiggling against the constraint of the tight underwire. I avoided the area where I estimated her nipples to be. Those things were pretty fucking sensitive, and I wanted to ease into that slower. So instead I guided my thumbs to the outer sides, bringing the rest of my fingers up and cautiously sliding them under the bra as well. Her breath seemed to hitch. And I froze. Not knowing if she was doing it because she liked it, or because she did that. But there was no cookie and no tension. So I kept going, guiding the fingers up to the middle of her chest, while my knuckles strained under the stiff underwire, until eventually, I was holding her breasts in my hands. I stopped, still looking into her eyes, to make sure everything was still copacetic. Her eyes were becoming a little hooded, but her breathing remained unchanged. I held them there completely fucking still for a few moments, getting her used to my touch on them, until she arched her back again, into my hands. I looked at her all disapproving. She was trying to fucking push it, and this was something that needed patience. As subjective as it may be. After a few more moments, I began softly applying pressure, just like I did before, on top of her shirt. And I was really fucking battling not to think of what I was doing. And forcing myself not to think about shit, like how fucking supple she felt, and warm, and so perfectly proportioned to my hands it was unreal. She sighed as she gazed sideways into my eyes with her lips slightly parted. Then she darted them down to her chest, where my hands were cupping her completely. And then I kind of fucking panicked for a moment, because I didn't know if actually seeing it would change the effect any. But instead of dancing or saying cookie, she made the quietest moan I had ever fucking heard and closed her eyes. And I wanted to bang my head against the tree trunk, because if I heard her moans, I'd be done for. I fought to keep focus. I refused to let myself look at it. So I kept my gaze on my girl's face, shifting my hands, and beginning a slow and careful massage. She wasn't tensing up, but her breathing was changing slightly. She never said the word though, so I figured it was more of a bodily reaction, and a mental one. I kept rubbing slowly, applying more pressure with every caress. I stopped my massaging to really squeeze them, forcing them up to the center of her chest. Her breath hitched again, making me freeze until I could determine that it was still okay. I fought to keep my gaze on her eyelids, and her slightly parted lips, and everywhere but her chest as I was squeezing her peaks together. Until eventually I had worked and squeezed all I could without making contact with the most crucial part. I cautiously slid my thumbs from the sides of her breasts to the centers, running them over her nipples, which I was just finding out were fully erect, and quickly sweeping them downwards. She fucking moaned when I did it. The meadow was so quiet and peaceful. And she filled it with that one fucking sound that would unravel me. I was so fucking happy that she didn't tense when I did it, and she just laid her head on my shoulder, and was actually enjoying it. But I was so fucking gone. I looked. I groaned. I sighed, and leaned my head back against the trunk, looking down my nose at my hands inside my girl's pretty blue shirt. I ran my thumbs back up over her nipples, making her breath hitch again. I'm pretty sure she could feel my dick pressing into her as she sat on me, and it really wasn't helping matters any. I kept looking as I squeezed again. And fucking Christ, the scooping neck of her shirt exposed my fingers on her. When I did it, I battled further to push down all the lust I was feeling in that moment. Tried not to realize how good they felt in my hands. How I could feel my girl's heart beating with every squeeze and caress. Remembering the feeling of her pressed against me on Christmas Eve, and wishing I could go back to that moment so I could really fucking look at her. And as I kept squeezing, and massaging, and running my thumbs over her erect nipples, she would let out tiny moans from my shoulder. I didn't know if she was looking because I couldn't really focus on anything else but the sight of it. I loved hearing her make those noises. I loved that I was making her feel that way. After the week she had, it made me so fucking elated to give her even the smallest pleasure. And I was on a bit of a smug high for even accomplishing it at all. And after a moment, I was really fondling her, like I meant it. Squeezing and rubbing, and eventually ran my whole palm over her nipples. She whimpered when I did it, and bucked her hips up a bit, making me finally lift my head to her neck, so I could shift my gaze to hers. She was looking at my hands when I lifted my head, but she darted her eyes to mine. And she was breathing deeply and her eyes were so fucking filled with lust and need. I'm not sure what mine looked like, but they were probably pretty similar. I stopped my hands. And I didn't know why. Maybe it was because I thought we would stop. Maybe it was because I wanted to know what she wanted me to do next. But it was probably equal amounts of both. I didn't fucking know. I didn't plan this far ahead, because I didn't have enough faith in it. Her tongue darted out to her slightly parted lips and licked them as she gazed at me with those hooded brown eyes. Her chest was fucking heaving under my hands. And my dick was throbbing underneath her. I was trying to ask her with my eyes, "What do you want?" I was trying to tell her, "I'll give you fucking anything." I needed her to know, "This is for you." Half of me was hoping when she opened her mouth, the word cookie would come out. Another, much hormonal, part of me was hoping she didn't want my hands to stop. She darted her eyes to her shirt and back to meet my gaze, licking her lips again.
"Can you do more?"
She breathed, gazing fucking intensely into my eyes, while her chest heaved underneath me. "You have got to be fucking kidding me." I had to ask. "What do you suggest?" I asked, in a voice that was far too fucking husky for my liking. She licked her lips again, and I wanted to ask her to knock it the fuck off.
"Something lower,"
she asked quietly, fucking pleading with her eyes again. All the air left my lungs in a gust, as her words hit me. She really fucking wanted it. She wanted me to touch her there. And I had no fucking clue how hard that would be, or how long it would take to accomplish it. And my only hope was that it would take me so long, that by the time I did, my fucking erection would be gone, and I could focus again. She wasn't even blushing when she asked. She blushed when I pulled her fucking chair out for her. But not when she wanted me to touch her between her legs. It seemed so fucking weird to me, and so Bella. I removed my hands from her bra, never breaking her lust-hooded gaze, and slid them down to her stomach. I needed to get an initial reaction, some general basis, since it was something I had never done before. I slid my hands out of her shirt and over her hips. I guided one hand to the top of her thigh and used the other to slowly caress the hand on the ground at my side. I used one of my knees to gently nudge her legs slightly parted on top of me. I rubbed her thigh gently, starting on the top and caressing the side with my thumb, and then moving my fingertips to the inside. Her jeans were unusually thin, and that was probably not going to work in my favor. I held her gaze as I got my initial reaction, sliding my hand up and gently grazing the seam between her legs.
"Cookie,"
she said, tensing up minutely and staring into my eyes. I moved my hand back to the top of her thigh. And I wanted to fucking groan. Because it wasn't nearly as bad as her breasts were. It should have been, at least I'd expect it to be. Of course she had ground against my heart on so many times with it, maybe she was just gradually desensitizing herself. Fuck, if I knew. I continued caressing the top of her hand with mine while I gently soothed her thigh, rubbing up to her hip, and back down as far as I could reach. It took 3 passes before she was entirely limp again. I kept my eyes on hers for the second try, sliding my hand up her inner thigh and grazing the seam again.
"Cookie,"
she whispered with a twitch of her legs. I moved my hand back to the thigh, but she was already limp again. Only a fucking twitch. I still rubbed from her hip to her thigh again before I made my third pass at trying. I slid my hand up her inner thigh once again, grazing the seam lightly. No cookie. I went back the other way, grazing it once more. Still nothing. And then I was pretty fucking lost, because I had planned it all out for groping her, and this was unexpected. Her eyes were still pleading for me to push farther, and do more. I fucking sighed right into her ear. Who's defeated now? I slid my hand from her hip to between her legs once more, just sticking to the method I had used before on her breasts, and lightly eased